When you have invested time and effort into your embroidery, you need to mount it and display it at its very best. Even after being worked in a frame, this piece has a few puckers, and giving it a good press with a hot iron will not fix it. It will probably make things worse by fixing the puckers and wrinkles in place. To present work properly, it needs to be stretched. The first thing you will need is some form of board to stretch on, something you can push pins into. What I have here is some old-fashioned insulation board which has been covered with some calico. This old-style insulation board can bleed when steamed and you don't want it to stain your work, so having the board covered protects your work. Insulation board like this is no longer made, but the new version is even better. Modern insulation board is made from foam and is attached to plasterboard. It comes in different thicknesses, it doesn't bleed so you don't need to cover it, and it is just perfect for pinning into. You can buy insulated plasterboard from builders merchants and DIY stores, but it comes in large sheets. So you may wish to club together with friends to buy a sheet, then divide it up with a Stanley knife. Alternatively, ask a local handyman or plasterer for any offcuts they may have. This is commonly available stuff, cheap for the building trade, and offcuts often end up in a skip, so don't hesitate to ask. I have been known to salvage these things from the skip. Alternatively, you can use a cork notice board, but it needs to be thick enough and soft enough to drive your pins into, and you will need to cover it as cork can bleed and stain your fabric. Pam Keeling has several pieces of insulated plasterboard in her possession from the last exhibition, if you wish to get in touch with her about borrowing them. To stretch your piece of embroidery, you need to pin it out. And this is where the real work is done. I'm using long dressmaking pins, and all I do is start in the centre of the top edge, push the pin in to anchor it, and then stretch to pull the puckers out and put a pin in directly opposite. I now work my way along the top and bottom edges, working towards the corners, pin in at the top, stretch, pin in at the bottom. Having completed the top and bottom edges, I'm now going to do exactly the same thing on the sides. Start in the middle, push my pin in at an angle to stop it from slipping, put one opposite and work towards the corners, stretching as I go. And finally we get to the corners, same again. Working opposite. Now at this point, if you're not entirely satisfied with the tension and how well you've pulled the puckering and wrinkles out, you can pull a few pins out and just adjust slightly, which I'm going to do here. If you have a lot of wrinkles concentrated in one area, it is often easier to pull those final little bits out once you've got the rest of the fabric pinned out and in place. So there we have it, stretched and ready for steaming. So here comes the steam. And as you can see, all I'm doing is waving steam at this piece of embroidery. I'm not pressing it, I am not making contact. Just giving it a really good dose of nice hot steam. And that should do. Well, 5 minutes have elapsed and this has cooled down, so I'm now going to remove the pins. And as you can see, we now have one beautiful, pristine, perfectly stretched piece of embroidery. If you're not completely satisfied with your first attempt and there are still a few wrinkles and puckers, do it again. It will respond for a second or even third steaming. And this piece is now ready to be mounted.